Welcome to this episode of the Rock and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, R.J.O Olson. I'm excited to share something special this week, a conversation I had a few years ago with the Conscious Living Network on Conscious Living Radio. In this interview, I talk about my journey and share insights to inspire healthy conscious living. Even though it's an older conversation, the ideas and inspiration are just as relevant today. I hope you enjoy listening and find some fresh motivation for your own healthy living journey.
You're listening to Conscious Living Radio on Corp Radio Station. My name is Andrew Resmer.
And I'm Tasha Sims. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're talking about powering up your body with living nutrition. Our guest, R.J.O Olson, specializes in whole food and gluten-free nutrition, weight management, fitness, and wellness coaching. She uses her experience with emotional eating and sugar addictions to inspire her clients to release fears, step into greatness, and embrace a whole food, active, and empowered lifestyle. She's a coach, author, speaker, and a true example of how dedication, perseverance, and taking responsibility for one's health can result in reaching optimal health and personal goals. She holds a degree in kinesiology, numerous personal training and group fitness certifications, a holistic life coach certification, and is a certified vegan nutritionist and chef. Welcome to the show, Rachel. So, what's your personal story? How did you become passionate about food and nutrition?
Wow, it's been quite a journey, actually. For many years, I was actually suffering with quite bad digestive issues and had always sought out different ways to manage my chronic pain in the digestion. And a lot of this actually stems from me as a child and learning to love foods that are high in sugar and salts and fat. And
I wouldn't know anything about that.
No, most people wouldn't, right?
What about chocolate?
Oh, yes, love chocolate. Really, my biggest path kind of started with food addictions and some eating disorder problems when I was younger, and of course translated into an adult that caused a lot of the digestive issues. So kind of on that binge eating deprivation cycle.
And how old were you when you kind of went, okay, this is not working, no diet's going to work, no, I'm caught in some cycle that's, really a dead end? Did you have that light bulb moment? Was it a moment?
It really was. And one particular moment, I actually was in my late 20s. So it was quite a long time before I realized it. But one particular moment I'll remember, I came home one night and just pretty much ate everything I could get my hands on in the cupboard and found myself lying on the bathroom floor in pain because I had eaten so much and just thought, wow, I think I might have a problem here. I remember that day clearly. I ended up having to call in sick to work the next day because it was so bad. So I did a little bit of research on, eating disorders and sugar addictions and things like that, and thought, okay, I better seek out some help. So on recommendation from a friend of mine, I went and saw a natural herbologist. I'm big into the natural holistic healing. I always have been. Went to a herbologist, and he basically took one look at me and said, whoa, you are a massive sugar addict. Yeah, and for me, I was like, first of all, how do you know? And second, basically he looked at me and my hands were shaking. It was so bad to the point where if I didn't have my fix of sugar, I would literally shake like a drug addict.
Wow. And how did you move into vegan, or was that progressive? Did you just start by cutting out the basic things that we all know are not good for us, and then did that come later?
It was actually quite progressive. So because I was always searching for ways to make my digestive system feel better, I started doing a lot of reading and education on, what would help. So I started by cutting out red meat and found that helped a lot because I had done some reading on that it's slow digesting and my body just had a really hard time digesting it. And then over the years, I kind of thought, well, why don't I try dairy? I'll cut dairy out, see how that felt. And I felt that dairy was the biggest one for me. Once I cut that out, a lot of my pain, a lot of my bloating went away. And then I actually trained for a figure competition. So it's like a bodybuilding fitness competition. And sought out a holistic coach. So he was a raw vegan coach and suggested to me that if I wanted him to train him, he suggested that I do raw vegan. And so he taught me a ton about what that actually meant. I had already started looking into that, dabbling a little bit into vegan, but he definitely helped me take that to the next level.
Mm-hmm. And so you've written a book, and it focuses on, like, what makes it unique? What do you think is unique about this book and your approach?
Well, what I have found specifically from my feedback is that it's an easy-to-read book for really anyone, and it's not supposed to be, to transform someone into vegan. It's really meant to just teach people how they can add whole food nutrition into their daily life in a very easy way. And the feedback that I've gotten from people, especially since my story is actually in there, is that I'm really hitting home with people, is that people are relating, going, wow, I've actually dealt with some of these things. I've been on various diets and just haven't seen results. And more and more people, because of my story, are now actually open to trying new ways of living and eating. So it's been really exciting.
And give me a perfect day. Could you do that? A good food day from breakfast to bedtime. What would that be?
Well, for me personally, a perfect food day is waking up in the morning to a smoothie. I usually have a smoothie that's mostly full of fruit and then other superfoods such as maca, 14 mushroom blend, ashwagandha. I love ashwagandha. So that would be a perfect breakfast for me. A variety of berries and some healthy fats like an avocado or something like that. And then a morning snack, that kind of depends. Sometimes it's a green juice or a handful of nuts or something, maybe a piece of fruit. For lunch, especially, I'm kind of talking summer here for sure, but for lunch, summer is often, sometimes I'll do like a raw soft taco, so made with some ground walnuts and salsa and sprouts wrapped in a lettuce wrap. An afternoon snack. What do I like for an afternoon snack? Again, usually some nuts or like a hummus and veggies or something like that. And dinner, I'm a big salad fan, so a big kale salad or a big spinach salad. Those are probably my favorite choices for dinner.
And are you 100% raw now?
I am not 100% raw. In the summertime, I have to say I am quite close to 100% raw. In the wintertime, I am based out of Calgary. So as pretty much everybody knows, Calgary is pretty cold. So in the wintertime, I do crave soups and steamed veggies and things like that.
And can we talk a bit about the body's ability to absorb nutrients? Because I read a stat that said we absorb 10% fewer nutrients every 10 years we age. So that would mean by the time you're 50, you're only absorbing 50% of the food that you're eating. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I find that, as we age, definitely our body has a harder time. And it also really depends, too, on our food and, of course, the quality of the food that we are eating. So depending on the kind of food that we're eating, if we're eating a lot of processed foods and different things like that, it really diminishes our body's ability to absorb nutrients.
Do you believe that breaking it down, like whether you're juicing or using a blender, but breaking it down into a form that's already more digestible, do you think that's a way to go, a really important thing to consider?
Absolutely. Yeah, especially with juicing or blending, because a lot of these raw vegetables, like things like kale, sometimes people have a hard time digesting kale and breaking kale down. So yeah, juicing that and blending helps the body break it down and absorb it much faster.
What about detoxing or some form of diet that is intended to dissolve the mucus that has been built over the years of bad eating habits in our intestines?
I get that question a lot. What about detoxing? It's funny, I actually just had that question today. I think detoxing is extremely important. For me, I like doing it definitely recommending to my clients on a quarterly basis, just to detox the environmental, the processed foods that we're eating, things like that. And, the detox that I usually recommend for my clients is a raw vegan diet, something that's more loaded up with green veggies, faster digesting foods. Sometimes I would say I'd recommend a juice cleanse, not for very long for most of my clients, but yeah, I think raw vegan and raw as much as possible is definitely the way to go for a really great detox.
And when you say your clients, you gave us your own story, how changing lifestyle, changing food habits have literally saved your life, or at least greatly improved your daily enjoyment of life. Can you give us a couple more stories like that from your clients?
Yes, absolutely. So I've worked with a lot of chronic condition patients, so meaning people that have diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, different things like that. And what I've found is as I have helped them introduce more whole foods, raw foods into their diet, they start to see the blood pressure decrease. They start to get off high blood pressure medication. One gentleman in particular, actually, he came to me. He was in his mid to late 30s, jacked up on high blood pressure medication. He'd been on it for a long time. His doctor told him he would never get off. It didn't matter what he did. He would never get off of it. And so just through, basic diet changes, more fruits, more veggies added into his diet, of course, more exercise, we really got him moving. Within about the 6 months that we worked together, he was pretty much off all his high blood pressure medication. So it was very exciting to see that change. And such a young man, actually, who thought that he would be on those medications for the rest of his life.
And what is the role or your attitude towards what some people, including our guest that is coming in a couple of weeks to Vancouver, David Wolf, superfoods and super herbs?
Wow. So love them. So first of all, David Wolf, I've been studying him for many, many years, and the work that he's doing, and the superfoods that, he introduces to people, and the super herbs, they are some of the most powerful foods in the world that, I really love the work that he's doing to really help make the average person aware of some of these powerful healing nutrients that we are lucky to now, because of people like David, have it readily available for anyone to actually consume. So like I said, personally, I eat lots of different superfoods every day and recommend that to all my clients. Now, some people aren't ready for it.
What makes something a superfood, though? Can you just define it for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So what would make something a superfood is basically a food that really helps improve, I would say, immune system, the internal organs like digestion, blood, all those different things. So it's something that is just a highly, highly energetic food source for the body.
And some examples of those type of foods and effect they have on health.
Well, some of my favorite superfoods include, I love maca powder. What I love about maca is that it actually, for me, it tastes like marshmallows.
Side perk.
Right, those toasted marshmallows that you may have had as a kid, right?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
I find that maca tastes like that. So, maca is a great one to add into a smoothie in the morning. And, maca is known to improve things like anemia, chronic fatigue, depression, and then, of course, the one that all my clients laugh when I say is to increase libido.
I thought is that for men and women? I thought it was mostly for men.
It is for men and women,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
What else do you like? What other superfoods?
Well, I love things like the algae and marine phytoplankton, especially the marine phytoplankton, because this food is 100% usable in the body. It helps enhance the energy, immune system, decreases chronic pain. So I have a lot of clients who actually suffer from arthritic pain, things like that, so I would suggest the marine phytoplankton to them.
And how do you put that in your smoothie too?
I actually put it in my water in the morning. So every morning I have a water with lemon and just use a liquid tincture of the marine phytoplankton. That's what I use. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so goji berries, I love goji berries. Those are something that are great to, they're full of antioxidants, again, boost the immune system. All of these superfoods really help boost the immune system. And due to the red color of goji berries, really help support cardiovascular health.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of words that get bandied about, and I think people don't actually know what they mean, like antioxidants. I know we all use the word, or free radicals. People are like nodding, yeah, it prevents free radicals, and then they don't really understand what that is.
I am a free radical.
Except for Andrew, who is a free radical.
I am.
So you know who you are, because you're
talking
conscious.
about me all the time.
So maybe can you define those two in particular?
Absolutely, and you're right. A lot of people, we do, especially in the healthcare industry, we throw those words around, and I think a lot of people's eyes glaze over and think, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. So how I like to explain antioxidants and free radicals basically is that free radicals are, molecules or atoms that are in the body and that are causing that are basically as a result of metabolic processes in the body or environmental toxins that have actually started to harm the body. So free radicals are basically the cause of the aging process, basically, or the breakdown of body tissue. Mm-hmm. So how I usually explain to my clients is that when you think about Pac-Man, so free radicals are the ghosts that float around in your body. An antioxidant is a molecule that inhibits basically the oxidation or inhibits or breaks down, gets rid of free radicals. So the more antioxidants that we can have in our body, such as, our vitamins A, C, and E, different enzymes that we can get from berries and highly colorful foods, the antioxidants act like Pac-Man that really just get in there and get rid of those ghosts or free radicals that are damaging and breaking down the body.
Mm-hmm. And then water also that we're drinking has an impact here, yes?
Absolutely. So it's really important, and that's, one thing that I've certainly learned over the years from David Wolf, in that, really nowadays our drinking water is actually a lot of the times detrimental to our health because of all the cleansing agents and filtering agents that they're putting in the water. So it's really, really important for all of us to watch where our water sources are coming from, like a spring water or some sort of filtered water anyway, for sure.
What are you a fan of? What do you use? What's in your kitchen?
Oh, to be honest with you, I do have a reverse osmosis system. Not everybody likes it, but I don't live next to a spring, so I do use the reverse osmosis system right now, and it seems much better than the tap water that we have here.
And when we're talking about enzymes and antioxidants, it is crucial that the food is raw, because that's the only way those enzymes stay alive and can create those protective help, correct?
Absolutely. And that's why when a lot of people ask, well, why it's so important, because I'm always raw food, why is it so important? Well, you're right, Andrew, in saying that once the food is cooked, especially if we're cooking at really extreme high temperatures, like in the oven and on the barbecue and that sort of thing, the enzymes just cannot survive and they're destroyed, which personally I believe is a really big reason why so many people now have digestive problems.
Mm-hmm. But you can lightly steam. I mean, you're not that much of a purist, are you?
No, I definitely do lightly steamed and recommend that, for somebody who is searching for something warm, that lightly steaming the veggies, just till they're still crunchy.
Yeah. Andrew's shaking his head. We're on different sides of the fence with this one.
It's good that we're on different sides of the table as well.
It's probably good.
Andrew, do you not believe in steaming your vegetables?
Well, I think it's obviously there is two different directions why we eat food. One is for pleasure, and if that's the direction, then obviously adding different salt or different sugars.
We didn't say salt or sugar. We're talking about lightly steaming. And can I do my premise first, which is different body types actually. I mean, your own body is your barometer of whether something's working or not working. And so I do think for your example, Rachel, you're in the cold, you're in Calgary, to have a little warming soup, it doesn't have to be, you didn't boil it for 3 days. It's just, warmed.
That's a good point, because if temperature that enzymes and vitamins sustain living is 40 degrees. Right. So anything that has been boiled or steamed, because steam is obviously 100 degrees, right? So on the surface of that veggie, those enzymes are dead and those vitamins are destroyed. On the crunchy part on the inside that has not been overheated is still containing those nutrients that we're hopefully introducing to our body. So there are ways to create a warm soup without destroying. And I've seen in your book some of those recipes. Maybe you can share a little bit.
Yes, I agree with you, like a warm soup or something. So, definitely having a tool like a dehydrator or a Vitamix is amazing, because you can get a little bit of warmth from a Vitamix by mixing a soup, and I'll do that often. And you're right. There are, kind of different ends of the story. I've done some reading and research in Chinese medicine, and so a lot of the Chinese medicine people that I talk to have said, if you do live in a cold climate, you might want to balance your qi with some warm energy, with some warm food. If you lived in a warm climate, well, then, maybe eating raw would be easier. So again, I think it's kind of a personal choice, but I know for me personally, when I do eat 100% raw, I feel much better. Yeah.
And I love when people make that choice for themselves without feeling like, for me, anything that says this is the way to do it.
And the only way.
And the only way I have a problem with. Cause,
absolutely, yeah.
It's just another form of limitation, another box.
Well, it is, and especially like in my field, when I'm really working on getting people just to make better choices, the last thing I want to do is go in there and say, listen, you need to do this 100% right, or, or not at all.
Or feel guilty, feel bad and feel guilty, yeah.
Right, and because I do work with a lot of people that have food addictions and, kind of eating disorder issues, that is certainly the last thing I want to be coming in on, is just saying, let's start adding some of this stuff in. If you prefer it warm, great, but, of course, educating them on, what's maybe better, a better way to prepare it. And that's what I love about raw foods, is you can make the food taste absolutely amazing without having to do a whole lot of cooking.
Just in case our listeners are just tuning in, we're speaking with R.J.O Olson about powering up your body with living nutrition on Conscious Living Radio, 100.5 FM at Co-op. And I've got a question about, even with raw food, this whole...
Even with raw food.
Well, I'm going to say, because let's take the premise that's where the enzymes are. It's like one of the healthiest ways to get the nutrition in your body. But even there, overeating or binging on raw food can be a problem. If you sat there and ate cashews, which are raw food, beautiful cashews, but if you ate a bag of cashews or dehydrated, even apple slices, or like, give me your take on that. What do you think about that?
Well, absolutely. And, anything, even if it's a good thing, anything too much of is a bad thing, or it can be. So things such as, raw nuts, even though they are a better choice than a regular roasted nut, they're very hard to digest. So it really takes a lot for the body to break down in a large amount. And then, of course, for anybody who's looking to do any sort of weight management, nuts in a large quantity is something that you'd want to reduce or avoid altogether. And then as far as, dried fruits, man, those are so, trail mixes are so popular for people just as a grab-and-go snack, yet they're some of the most dangerous. The dried fruits in there spike the blood sugar up almost immediately, and with just too much condensed sugar. When you think about an apricot or a dried apricot, I don't think many of us would actually sit down and eat 10 fresh apricots. Right?
It's kind of tough to binge on the apples, too.
Right. But it would take nothing to eat, 10 or 20 dried apricots in a sitting for someone.
Talking about nuts, do you soak your nuts before using them?
Yes, I absolutely do. In saying that all the time, no. I mean, if it's kind of grab and go, but yes, I definitely recommend and as much as possible soak the nuts as long as I can overnight. I love it. What the soaking of the nuts does actually is wakes up the enzymes in the nuts. And for, I always say in a presentation, I'll say to my clients, I say, look, how long would an almond sit on a counter before it went bad? And they kind of look at me and go, well, probably a long time, right?
Apparently there have been some discoveries in pyramids, seeds that have been stored there for thousands of years.
Really?
And they are still alive.
Right. So if you soak them in water, even those nuts or seeds have been there for, thousands of years, the enzymes actually wake up. And, then they're perishable. They'll only last about 5 days in the fridge. But why I love soaking them is because then those enzymes will actually help the body break down that nut. And, most people find that when the nuts are soaked, they just can't eat as much of them, or they just choose not to eat as much of them because now they're more nutrient dense.
And there's another component that I think Brian Clement was talking about last time when he was here, that those nuts and seeds can stay on the shelf for years or thousands of years, because they have a chemical, a protective chemical that is preventing those nuts from attracting, even if they're in the relatively humid environment, they are not going to, mold is not going to grow on them. But this chemical is not best for our bodies. So what happens within the first 20 minutes or an hour when we soak nuts, this chemical is released, and Ryan suggested to dispose of that water and put those nuts and seeds in the fresh water overnight.
Yes, that's right. And, a lot of people will say, well, what can I do with that water? Can I use it in something? And it's like, no, absolutely not, because that chemical will be released in the water as it soaks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there is statistically, and it varies from nuts and seeds, but I've heard that sometimes between 10 to 20 times nutrients can be absorbed by body if the same nut or seed have been soaked or sprouted.
Mm-hmm. Much more absorbable. The body is it's kind of like blending a fruit and vegetable, right? That it's been actually broken down. That protective kind of, aspect of the food has been broken down, so the body can absorb it and break it down much faster, which is always what we want, right? Especially, like I said before, so many of us have such compromised digestive systems because of years and years of eating foods that, were processed and dead.
Mm-hmm. Tell us more about sprouting.
Sprouting. Oh, I love sprouting. So sprouting, it actually is a great way for those of us, who do prefer raw vegan. And the reason for that is because, things like quinoa or, lentils or different sorts of beans can be sprouted and without being cooked, they can stay raw, and we get those nutrients that are absolutely easily absorbable in the body. So how to actually do it? Is that what you want me to ask?
Oh, no, what the benefit of eating sprouts is from health point of view.
Well, I'd like you to add how you actually do it, because one of my questions is just all the equipment that is kind of necessary as you start to go down this road. So I'd love you to talk about the fact that you don't need any equipment to sprout and like that.
You need a jar.
Well, you might need a jar.
Yeah, you might need a jar. So, so again, because, these seeds, like sunflower sprouts are one of my favorites, and these seeds are then, you're basically eating the grass, the high nutrient, there's 75% usable amino acids in these, in these beautiful sprouts, and tons of protein that people don't even realize. And making them are fairly simple. So something like a sunflower sprout would actually need a wheatgrass tray or something like that. But for things like quinoa, I've done quinoa before, and it needs a jar, like Andrew said. You need a jar and maybe a nut milk bag or some sort of straining material that goes over top of the bag. So you just soak it in filtered water, some sort of spring water or filtered water, and you would, rinse the sprouts, turn the jar on occasion, and always be replenishing the water. So sometimes we laugh because I actually find that I don't do a lot of sprouting sometimes, but when I do, we laugh that it's our babies. We have to go home and flip the jars. You can't leave for 2 or 3 days
instead of walking the dog. You've got to go flip the sprouts.
Yeah, that's right. A friend of mine laughed about that one day. We were out and about, and he's like, I have to go home and flip my sprouts.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by sprouting because, when I did my study of that form of eating, it not only contains 10 to 20 times more nutrients than in the same mass as original ingredients, but literally you can buy $200 worth of sprouts and feed the entire family for a month.
That's right. Yeah, just because it has so much more absorbable protein and fiber, and you're absolutely right, minerals, amino acids, vitamins. Yeah.
So I know you're coming into town and you're doing a talk. Is that right?
I am, yeah.
Tell our listeners about that.
So I'm going to be talking about, again, my biggest passion, the magic of living nutrition, based on some of the concepts in my book, and just talking about what I'm going to be going is through some specific foods that we, are kind of normally in our diet that we don't really think about, and going through those specific foods like different fruits and vegetables and helping people really understand what is that food actually doing inside my body.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Give us some examples of those foods that you're going to be talking about.
Right, so things like apples, right? So an apple, which a lot of people don't know, has 10,000 phytonutrients in one apple alone. So, what I'm talking about is, comparing where a lot of people think they're taking a supplement, a multivitamin supplement, oh, I'm doing a really good job here. A multivitamin could never, ever get 10,000 phytonutrients into one capsule. So, eating things like apples, we say, an apple a day takes the doctor away. Sure. Well, what is it actually doing for me? Another one is kale. Right? A lot of people know that, oh, somebody told me that kale is good for me, but what is it actually doing inside the body? So, things like the dark leafy greens like kale are really, really high in protein for people. So the first question I get is, where do you get your protein? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I can lead to people and say, did you know that your dark leafy greens actually provide your body with a ton of protein?
And by mass, it's actually more digestible and more assumable by the body than meat.
That's right. That's right. And so when I show people that comparison, a lot of people are usually quite shocked because, that's not what we're told in mainstream media.
What about calcium in milk that apparently we can't live without?
Yeah. We both laugh, Andrew, because we know better, right? But calcium in milk, it's got to be one of what I would say to most people is it's one of the biggest lies. I mean, where most people are getting milk from is, oh man, you shouldn't even get me started on this topic.
I still have 20 minutes. Don't worry, Rachel.
Yeah.
Go for it. Be a free radical.
There is room for two of us in this world.
Well, I mean, in mainstream media, right, where are people getting their nutrition education from? TV, magazines, radio, agriculture, and, as a vegan, I mean, there's many reasons why I wouldn't ingest calcium. I mean, or milk, number one, is by far the way those animals are being treated when they're at the plant. Where they're being stuffed full of food that just, is genetically modified, that they can't digest. And what happens to us when we eat things that aren't good for us? Well, we become sick, and let alone the steroids and all this sorts of stuff that's going into these animals. And, our body, and, one thing, again, I learn a lot from David Wolf. And, I went to the Longevity Now conference in February, and, he was talking about how, that sort of calcium and different things like that from multivitamins, like calcium supplements, go straight to the joints and basically cause coral-like supplements in the joints. And I've got clients whose doctors are telling them, take a handful of calcium supplements every single day. And I'm just going, get off of it. What are you doing? Eat spinach, add almonds to your diet. Much more readily available calcium, than in the milk. And, of course, whey protein is huge in my industry, in the bodybuilding industry, and our body just can't recognize it, and it can't break it down, so it causes a lot of inflammation and so toxins in the body.
You're clearly not a fan of taking supplements. You're saying let's find natural sources to give it to the body.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, multivitamins for sure I'm not a big fan of. If a person could get their hands on a whole food supplement, one of my favorite supplements is Juice Plus because it is nothing but fruits and vegetables in a capsule. That would be the only thing I would suggest, minus superfoods, super herbs. Those would be my kind of supplements that I would suggest to people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, more of a natural whole food supplement. I mean, multivitamins and multiminerals in the stores nowadays are nothing but a bunch of chemicals that our body just can't.
According to statistics, I think by science done by Hippocrates Institute, over 95% of what is sold over the counter as nutritional supplements are synthetic chemicals.
Oh. I know, and the body just has no idea what that even means. I say to my clients, when you take your multivitamin, what happens when you go to the washroom in the morning? Well, you pretty much can see it's fluorescent yellow. So it means, those vitamins are not being absorbed, or chemicals, I should say, are not being absorbed in the body, right? Where a whole food, like an apple, like I said, that has 10,000 phytonutrients, is 100%, bioavailable for for the body.
And let's move a little bit into the mushrooms. Shall we do that?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms. You have some opinions, I'm sure, on chaga and reishi.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I always laugh because when I talk about medicinal mushrooms to my clients, they kind of look at me and go, What?
She's tripping.
Magical, you said?
Yeah. What are you talking about? Well, the medicinal mushrooms. Again, I've learned a lot from our special guest next weekend, or your special guest next weekend. But highly, highly bioavailable for people, and antibacterial and antiviral properties that are huge, right? That help us fend off of disease, and different immune problems and immune disorders, and the antibiotic properties that are in there. I mean, it's like no other. When you really hear kind of what mushrooms like chaga and reishi can do for the body, you think, why isn't everybody on this? How come doctors don't have this in their offices and prescribing this for people?
I do find it interesting trying to figure out how much to take, and everybody I talk to does it differently and has different sort of opinions on what the difference even between the two. Like, I know you're a huge chaga fan, Andrew, and I do reishi all the time. But again, I'm just creating my own little formula. There's no one actually telling me how much to take.
When I start buzzing, I stop.
You don't do you buzz on chaga?
Oh yeah, I buzz on chaga.
Seriously?
Oh yes. If I drink a gallon of it a day, I'll definitely buzz in the evening.
How about, can you just give an overview on your thoughts on both the difference between the two and how to take them, or how much to take?
Well, I think that's going to be different for every person. I know that for me, I actually do take a 14 mushroom blend just because I like having a little bit of all. But reishi, what I really love is the reishis are, again, it's great for boosting the immune system, helping ward off different viral infections like the flu. I mean, so many of us here in North America suffer from the flu so bad all the time. And, again, we're told, go get the flu shot. Well, let's start, jacking up on reishi mushrooms, and maybe we won't have as much flu problems. Mm-hmm. So, it helps reduce the blood pressure, high cholesterol, and, again, I kind of come from a background of working with people with chronic conditions, and, now that I know these benefits from mushrooms like reishi, I just think, get off of those medications and start taking reishi and chaga. Mm-hmm. Chaga, we talked about earlier, is that it's super, super high in antioxidants, right? So to get rid of those free radicals and, things like warding off cancer or keeping cancer in check. It's even known to be, an anti-HIV agent, antibacterial. There's just so many the list of benefits is just never ending.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of, I guess, the second part of the question, how much to take it, what would be your recommendation?
Well, I mean, I guess it would just kind of depends on the person, but I know that for me personally, with my 14 mushroom blend, I usually only take about half a teaspoon, sometimes in the morning and sometimes at night. So is it in a tincture? Is it in a powdered form? And like you said, Andrew, if you feel like you're kind of buzzing a little bit too much, you might want to back off.
Andrew likes the buzz.
That's my way of getting it.
So I was looking through your the talks. I know you do a lot of talks, and I was just kind of glancing through all the different areas that you talk about. So can we bounce around on a couple of those topics? We still have time, I think.
Yeah, and we kind of stopped you on describing your lecture that you're going to be offering next Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, well, the one on Wednesday, again, like I said, it's talking about my biggest passion, the living nutrition. And one thing I do touch on in that talk is just really the obesity issue in our society now, is that, this is a huge, huge epidemic. And when doctors are showing, or statistics are showing, that over 60% of Canadians are adults are overweight or obese, that really, really touches home for me, because I just think, I see so many people walking around really killing themselves, and, children who are, 31% of Canadian children are overweight or obese. And that's really sad for me. So really the purpose of the Living Nutrition Talk specifically is to teach people, hey, you know what? You can get protein from plant-based foods. Kale is going to help you get some antioxidants in your body. We already talked about that. Beets and colorful foods will help with inflammation and detox. And when I speak to athletes about beets, I just always say, if you want a natural blood doper, drink beet juice before you go out and do your athletic event. It's going to help increase the blood oxygen level. So, going different things like that, broccoli for a lot of people, they don't even know that, for every cup of broccoli, there's 7 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
And people, a lot of think just there's no protein in plants. Well, there's more than you actually think. And like Andrew, you said before, it's actually more readily available for us.
Mm-hmm. What about the cost? Some people claim that switching from typical diet to vegan, especially organic, is more expensive.
Well, there's definitely a couple of ways to look at that. I would definitely disagree that I found that, when I was a meat eater or had meat eaters in my life, that was the biggest grocery bill, was when we bought these big things of meat. And, buying a bag of spinach or a little bit of kale is not really as comparable as that. The other thing I would say to my clients when they say, oh, organic is so much more expensive, well, I like to educate them on this is a bit of an insurance policy. So if you spend a little bit more now, that might seem a little bit more than what you're used to, you're going to be healthier in the long run. You're going to save money because you won't be as ill and sick and looking for, medical treatment.
And you're going to be more creative because your brain is going to work better. You're going to see and hear better. You're going to be more efficient and have more energy.
That's right. Corporations nowadays already know this, right? They know, and they've done studies on that. They know they're losing millions of dollars on lost productivity from unhealthy employees. So, a lot of the lunch and learns that I will do is talking on that specifically and saying, if you want to be more productive at work, if you want to have more energy with your kids, if you want to be more creative, and, if you're an artist, you definitely want to be feeding your body properly, feeding your brain, feeding your body to actually have the capacity to do these things.
And then you also touch on stress reduction techniques, and I'm just wondering if there's something that to you is really simple, but an important step that our listeners could, apply to their lives in terms of stress reduction.
Well, what I love to talk about is stress reduction. It is actually a couple of things. So once we are actually fed our body with proper nutrition, our body will be less stressed, number one. But I would say that my favorite stress reduction technique is really just relaxation, visualization, and meditation. So when I'm doing a talk, especially in a high stress job, I have everyone close their eyes and go through a really basic visualization of, allowing their body to relax. Every single part of your body becomes relaxed. And by the time they're done, they open their eyes and they look at me and go, wow, that's probably the most relaxed in that 1 or 2 minutes that I've been in, for the last week or whatever.
So you've kind of touched on it. You're clearing out your body. You're learning to soften and relax into it. And then, of course, there's exercise. And I'm just wondering, is there a tool that you could offer to people who have super busy lives to stay on track with exercise? Because so many well-intentioned people, and then they drop it, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, first of all is really get into a program of some sort or find a buddy. I love the buddy system because I find that holding each other accountable is really important. Just finding simple ways to stay active throughout the day. That could be, we've all heard, park at the farthest parking spot on the parking lot or take the stairs instead of the elevator. I actually had a client who I said, every time you get up from the couch or a chair, you do 10 squats. And every time you go into the kitchen or whatever, whether you're in the bathroom or in the kitchen by the sink, you're going to do 10 push-ups. Well, over the course of a year, she didn't really change much else but doing that because she was a bit low functioning. She lost 10 pounds.
Wow.
So just kind of showing people that every little bit counts. It could be as simple as, getting off the elevator a floor before you, get to your office and walk the rest of the way. So every little bit counts.
And you're saying beet juice before a workout. What about after? Right after?
Right after a workout, the best thing, you could do the beet juice again because what you want to do is get a carbohydrate in there, for sure, a fast-acting carbohydrate within 30 minutes of exercise. And what I usually recommend is a piece of fruit and, some sort of protein. So I like using like a hemp seed or something like that. So often my post-workout mix and blend is a handful of goji berries and hemp seeds.
We have only a few minutes left, and we have to ask you that question because in your description of upcoming event next Wednesday, there is some mention of becoming financially independent. So we were both wondering with Tasha how eating healthy helps with financial independence.
Well, there's a couple of different ways. I definitely can show you at the talk, but there's a way that we have developed as the Juice Plus company to actually help people come on board with us and help spread the great word of living nutrition, inspiring healthy living around the world. So that is something that I'll talk about a little bit at the talk, about how a person can actually do that. And it's really fun and exciting. Again, like we touched on before, I'll talk about, how can we save money when we're eating this way? Because again, dispelling that myth that it is more expensive to switch over. And, Andrew, you talked about the sprouts before, where when we're eating such high quality, nutrient dense food, we actually don't need to eat that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
I know, but from my own experience, I eat quarter in terms of volume of what I used to. And I still have same or more energy than before.
And I can't let you go without a comment on your favorite sweet something that's still really good for you and nutritious. So your favorite, I don't even want to use the word dessert because you're kind of getting out of desserts, but is there something that's super healthy, super wonderful, but has that, that little bit of sweet?
Well, my favorite is definitely going to be some sort of raw chocolate.
Okay, now we're talking.
Definitely raw cacao. It's my favorite. If I don't have a piece of raw chocolate around, I have cacao beans. And cacao beans and goji berries together in like a little sandwich is one of my favorite treats at nighttime.
Do you have a recipe in your book on making chocolate?
I absolutely do. So I have a superfood raw chocolate in my book that's extremely delicious. And the reason why it's called a superfood raw chocolate is because it has some of the superfoods that I talk about in the back of my book, and also we talked about here today. So we're boosting, not only are we getting to have that sweet, pleasure of chocolate, we're actually healing our body from the inside while we do that.
And what do you sweeten your chocolate with?
I often will use agave nectar. That's probably my favorite, a raw agave nectar. That's the one I use probably more often than anything else.
Now, I've been hearing not good things about agave, which is, again, that happens all the time when you're talking food. One week it's great, and then the next year gone. It's at the bottom of the list. And that's what happened with agave, I think. Or at least that's what I've been hearing.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, you're right. I mean, you're going to hear one good thing and one bad thing. But, I mean, it is a sugar. Yes, a sugar is a sugar for sure. It's going to affect the blood glucose level. But it does show that the agave nectar is a little bit lower on the glycemic index.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like stevia? Is stevia something you work with?
Stevia is actually not something I normally work with. I do like the actual stevia plant. So when I get to grow a stevia plant, in one of my tower gardens, I would definitely have that. But I don't like the powders or the liquids, just because I personally find it tastes like chemicals.
Mm. I like adding lacuma or maca into my chocolates, and they seem to be okay with it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I usually add an agave into when I especially wrote the book. I mean, a lot of people's palates do need time to change, and I found that, as a person starts to get away from those high sugary foods, you definitely need less and less sweeteners. So, then a maca would be a great addition to that, and you may not need the sweetener, but I've made chocolate that had no sweetener in it before, and people are just like, ugh, because they're just not used to it, right?
We have 1 minute left, and I wanted you to tell us why you're coming all the way from Calgary to see David Wolfe.
Oh, man. Well, I would come all the way to Calgary or go to anywhere to see David Wolfe, to be honest with you. I've been following him for a lot of years. The amount of knowledge this man has about herbs, superfoods, food in general, his passion is contagious for food, and I'm just really looking forward to it. I got to say, though, I'm really looking forward to the chocolate ceremony.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We've been speaking with R.J.O Olson on Conscious Living Radio, 100.5 FM in Vancouver.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Rock and Wellness Podcast. Make sure to visit my website at www.rjowellness.com, where you can subscribe to the show and check out all the show notes. While you're at it, if you found value in this podcast, if you'd simply tell a friend about it, that would help out too. You may choose to join the R.J.O Wellness community to take advantage of the freebies, courses, and coaching that will take your voyage to the next level, or support this podcast with your monthly membership. Until next time, my friends, keep rocking your wellness.